Well, thank you everybody for joining us. It's a busy week. It's a busy day. We were commenting this group a moment ago that it just seems like everything just lit up January 1st in terms of workload. So thank you for joining us for today's conversation. And appreciate you spending some time, and we're going to try to make this as less salesy and as practical and pragmatic as possible. I know that there's a lot of challenges that we're all facing, and we look forward to sharing some of our expertise. So let me just do a couple quick housekeeping thoughts, and I'll introduce our panel and we'll get rolling. So first, this is being recorded on January 20th of 2021. Look at that, I have a typo already. And part of the reason I wanted to mention that is the insights and opinions of our panel will be based on that context. I know many of you are watching this on demand and will be watching this in the future on demand. And so I think it's important to mention that what we're sharing and describing is really based on everything we've seen up to this point. So if you find yourself rewatching this over the summer of 21, wondering why our point of view might seem out of context, I think it was important to share this. So again, thank you to everybody that is joining us here on Zoom. My colleague, Katie Source, thank you for all of your help on the tech and promotion of all of this. Katie's also set this up to restream. So thank you for everybody that's watching this live on Facebook, as well as LinkedIn and YouTube. I think we're streaming on all three platforms right now. So the folks that are here live on Zoom, I as moderator will be looking for any chat or questions that you put in. We'll throw those to the panel as we have time, and certainly if they're relevant to the broader audience. Those of you that are watching this on social media, please put comments in and we'll field those offline after the event and share those with our panelists as well. So what we'll talk about over the next, say, 45, 50 minutes or so, a fair amount about recruitment and retention. That's really the theme of what we're talking about. And in particular, our panel has some insights they wanted to share on, the role of employees as brand ambassadors and how we can harness them in particular, what we can do to build a talent pipeline that goes beyond just job advertising and postings, and some insights throughout that whole thing. One other topic that I think will be of interest to this audience or our audience is how to nurture and how to engage with employees. Maybe they weren't necessarily the right fit for a particular position, but how do you keep in touch with them, and should you keep in touch with them to find the right fit ultimately within your organization? So again, this presentation will be made available. We have links that we can share, and please, if you have questions, for those of you that are here with us on Zoom, please put some notes into the chat and we'll try to moderate those as we go through. So let me just take a quick moment to jump out of this document and introduce our panelists. So seated to my left, or however it is on your screen, I wanted to first introduce Miriam Dushane. Miriam's the managing partner of Allant Workforce Solutions, and that is a professional workforce services firm headquartered in upstate New York. She built the company really from the ground up, launching in 2006 as Lineam Recruiting before rebranding a few years ago as Allant. And she and her team have assisted over 400 companies in attracting and hiring more than 4,000 top professionals in the decade or more that she's been in business, helping them really gain significant national recognition, including selection by Forbes as one of America's best recruiting firms for the past 4 consecutive years. In addition to her entrepreneurial perspective and work leading recruiting teams, she's also a SHRM certified professional in PHR with more than 20 years of HR experience, and really guided by 2 central tenets that I think she'll share with us today. First, always doing the right thing over turning a profit, and secondly, leading by example. So if you joined us before, you had a chance to hear about her work renovating a 100-year-old former schoolhouse in the Adirondacks and her love of painting, apparently. But she's also an eternal optimist and has to be, as a fan of the New York Mets. And so just wanted to briefly introduce Miriam. Seated to her right, or wherever we are on your screens, I wanted to introduce Charles Arcola. Charles is the Director of Marketing and Sales for Nurse Connection Staffing. Nurse Connection Staffing is a supplemental staffing agency providing highly skilled and trained RNs, LPNs, and CNAs. And they work with clients to help staff long-term and assisted living facilities, hospitals, medical office, school districts, correctional institutions, and even government and nonprofit organizations and state agencies. Charles really has built his career in workforce development, first working to support the Rensselaer County Chamber of Commerce, but really over the last decade has helped Nurse Connection staffing grow and expand their operations. He's helped to not only fuel that growth, but also open regional offices throughout upstate New York. And now their firm really services all of upstate New York, a pretty wide and diverse region. I'm sure he loves painting as much as Miriam does, but it's not here on his bio, but I know he is excited about volunteering for a lot of community-based organizations, including Hospice of Central New York, Onondaga Lake Conservation Corps, a number of civic organizations like the Ancient Order of Hibernians and Rotary Club, as well as being on the board of directors for a Sales and Marketing Executives Association. And he was just recently, I'm not sure if this will belie his age or birth date, but recognized as a 40 under 40 for those organizations as well. So, and he's also a very avid outdoorsman, but also snowboard instructor. So for those of you taking up the sport, feel free to put those questions in the chat as well as we're kind of going through. So I wanted to welcome
Miriam.
So I wanted to welcome both of them to this. And I think many of you already know me. I'm Paul Fahey, team leader for Smith & Jones, Healthcare Marketing and Communications. I'm excited to join. I'm actually very excited to learn a lot from the panelists and share what I can from our perspective. We've been very often tapped by our clients to help with recruitment and retention campaigns. And in particular, recruiting for hard to place positions or even, hard to attract regions. There are places where cost of living may be an issue, or culture for people who might be younger, nightlife and those kind of aspects. So happy to share some of those insights as we're going through. So anyway.
So what's the incentive of going to work when you could get those stimulus or unemployment benefits as well? And some of the posts and the response there were interesting. I'm just reading through them now, and it was like one of the posts that said, you got to go old school. You got to get out there. You got to get on the phone, have flyers out there, and more importantly, to ask for referrals. And ask for referrals from your current staff and your if you have field staff as well that are out there.
So Charles, let me build on that last part, asking for referrals from staff. What is the role, or what do you see, both of you, the opportunity for employees to be good brand ambassadors? How do you tap into that? Do you just simply send an email and say, hey, we have some job openings, send them to your neighbors, or is it deeper than that?
Yeah, certainly. If you don't mind, I'll start a little bit there. Is a lot deeper, right? So I think it's important, of course, the art of storytelling, right? In general, like, I remember when I first was helping Nurse Connection staffing expand from Albany, the capital district, across the state, and it was difficult because we're starting in a new region where we may have one client or zero clients at that time, but we have to hire staff on first. So really getting them to buy into your story, and understanding, and as a company, are you promoting your mission, vision, statements out there, and letting them know, you're getting them a sense of your culture, and then are you living that culture every day? So once you get them to buy in, then they can be your ambassadors out there. I mean, our best referral comes from our current staff who are out there with our new Nurse Connection name badges, when they're working in the field. We do offer referral bonuses for staff as well. So I noticed some other companies out there, some of our competitors, they even offer referral bonuses. You have to be a part of the organization. I don't know how that's done through payroll, but that's a separate issue. Yeah, so getting that out there, offering incentives to do so, and then like I said, really telling your story, and asking for feedback too from your current staff. Why do you choose to work for an agency? One of my favorite responses I got when I asked our staff last year of why they chose to work for an agency such as ours is, the one nurse said, I chose to work for an agency because I knew they would place me where I was needed the most. It's like, okay, that's why I do what I do every day. Sometimes we need those reminders and affirmations as well.
So, I mean, Charles hit it right on the head. I think the first thing a company needs to do is don't think that you can go out and have your employees be employee ambassadors if your corporate organization, culture, mission, core values, all of those things are not in place and aren't solid. So, I was talking to somebody several times last year where, people were struggling with the whole remote work aspect and the team aspect of that. And I said, honestly, I think companies that had good, solid cultures and good, solid practices were doing just fine during the pandemic if everyone was working remotely because they were already solid and strong. Remote work came in and poked the holes, or actually exposed the organizations that really weren't doing a good job on that front. So first, make sure that your culture is in check, your mission and values are in line, your employees believe in that, and then start to encourage them to be ambassadors. You can do that a variety of different ways. Social media is a big area of doing it. Encourage your employees. First of all, if you don't think your employees are on social media and aren't doing, work and connecting and networking with people that way, then you're silly. Like, stop, prohibiting, posts or those types of things. It's better to actually get them on board and help promote your organization. It could be whether it's through a community event that you do, it could be, employee of the month type recognitions that you do, employee birthdays, all of those things that kind of show the culture in addition to the jobs that might be available. So I think that's important as well. So utilize the tools that you have available to be a very good experience for your organization. And, a lot of people, the counter argument is that, well, what if they're not happy and they're going to say a bad thing about the organization? Well, honestly, how you'll be judged is how you respond to that and handle that situation. Because guess what? It's not going to stay quiet, regardless if the person is posting on social media or not. People tend to share negative experiences about 15 times more likely than they are positive experiences. So it's how you handle a situation. And honestly, maybe you need to know about that negative comment or remark because it needs to be addressed and taken care of. And sometimes maybe that's the only way it's going to get out there. So I wouldn't be afraid of social media and negative comments from employees, but make sure you have a strategy to address it and put your company in the best light. And then from a referral perspective, yep, you can pay for referrals. I have a different philosophy on referrals, I think, than other organizations might. Mine is, yes, ask for referrals, but ask for referrals of your top performers, your people that are happy. You should know who's happy and not happy and engaged and not engaged, but also make sure it's a diverse slice of your work demographic and population. So, be very mindful of that. It's a climate of increased exposure to diversity and equality. So make sure your referrals and your techniques for recruiting are attempting to be intentional in terms of finding diverse candidates for those jobs. So I would, be very mindful in that and do an active campaign. Don't just say we have employee referrals. Go to people, talk to them, ask them, and get them involved from that perspective.
That's a good point, Miriam. Sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
Let me jump in for one quick second, Charles. I'll throw over to you because I want to build on what you and Miriam had just said for a second. I love the notion of, Charles's comment about storytelling and both of your comments about building and communicating that you have this culture with a set of values. And I think that's something really important to keep in mind in the coming year. We've all been hit very hard by the pandemic. We had elective procedures that were put on hold, and that's really hit our revenues. I think in particular, the opportunity to build the brand and rebuild the brand in the coming year is going to be important. We're going to be tempted to want to put every dollar into service lines and just kind of keep ringing the register. But if we can push those values out, if we can start to talk about what it is we stand for, what it is we recruit for, and if our headlines are, forgive the basics, but, that we only hire the best, people who care the most, well, that's going to be a brand building opportunity for us. At the same time, we build an appreciative culture internally. I've always been a big fan. I think many of you that tune into these hear me say, please don't use stock photos. Please highlight your employees, use real people, attribute them. This is Paul from Latham, New York. I think that it creates a level of authenticity. And I think people internally and externally see that very appreciative tone. And honestly, this is healthcare's 9/11 moment. This pandemic, is shining a very bright light on the hard work that we do, much the same way we looked at firefighters, after 9/11. They're seeing us doing really amazing work, putting ourselves and our families at risk. We're exhausted at the end of each day. And there's a time for your organization's leadership to really celebrate that. And I think that goes to creating some of that cultural tone that Charles and Miriam were saying. Charles, I interrupted you a second ago. What were you going to say?
Just a few things, and going off what Miriam had said. So, because we have recruiters across the state, right? So I always ask them, weekly meetings and such, and I want them to have a top 5, staff in mind all the time that they can go to, that they can rely on for referral, that they can rely on for maybe competition feedback. So who's your top 5 staff that you can rely on and go to, because it's important to have that sort of relationship with those that you hire, and what are you doing to keep them engaged throughout the process? It's easy enough to say that yes, everybody throughout your organization should have a job in retention, right? But what are you doing? Are you putting an action plan into it? So recently we did put a 30, 60, 90 in place. So our recruiters are the first ones to follow up. So the recruiters get them through the application phase, being hired and onboarded with our HR and clinical team. But within those first 30 days, the recruiters are going to follow up and see how things are going, and just a simple check-in. Are you being cleared at a facility? I'm sorry, I'm kind of gearing this towards healthcare, but, are you cleared at a facility? Have you been working? Do you have any questions on our mobile app? Also gives them an opportunity to ask for maybe another referral. 60 days, we then have HR following up a little bit more, digging deeper into, is everything working again? That mobile app, time and attendance, other functions of payroll and such may be involved in there, but certain questions. And then important too, we implemented an anonymous survey at 90 days, because we don't always get the most candid feedback, right, when they're talking to somebody that they know, depending on their comfortability of what they're sharing. So, allowing that anonymous type survey is important as well. just as important it is to onboard too, but it's also important to, I think, have exit interviews as well. So if you guys are not, if your companies are not currently doing exit interviews, you should. It's valuable feedback, good, bad, and the ugly. And then one more thing off what Miriam said too is recognize your employees. I love, the employee of the month, quarter, year, but it should also be ongoing, right? And if you do for one, you have to do for all, right? So we also put together a special recognition committee. It's everything from birthdays, work anniversaries, thank you for your outstanding work. How are you recognizing those? And just again, making sure if you're doing for one, that you do the same for everybody.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, and Miriam, I'll throw to you. So Charles, what you're starting to describe is there's this continuum. It goes beyond just, here's your position, there's your location, welcome aboard, go. But I think, what you're describing in my mind keeps that retention, building. So Miriam, let me throw to you. Thinking about that continuum, thinking about onboarding and retention, what did you want to add to that?
So everything that Charles just mentioned is absolutely important for engagement and retention. When he was talking about the anonymous surveys, it's so funny because, we are in similar industries, but we do totally different types of placements. So we really don't compete with one another. But everything that he's doing within his organization, it's like from the same playbook for us. It's the same exact stuff. Because we have a whole workforce, and for both of us, we have two workforces. We have what we would call our internal team, and then we have everyone that's out in the field, but they're all our employees. And so treating them all the same, giving them the same recognition, creating that environment and that culture of, continuous feedback loops, HR check-ins, all of that stuff is really important. Recruiting doesn't end when you hire the person. It might take on a little bit different form, but that individual is going to be a representative of your company. And if you treat them well and you do all of the right things and you have all of these safeguards and things in place, they're going to be more likely to be an even better employee ambassador for you. The other thing is when he was talking about the surveys, if you're getting surveys and getting information, that could be a great marketing tool depending upon, the feedback and the information. And if you do, I recommend to my clients when I'm working with them through the onboarding piece of it, is you should do an onboarding type of, entrance interview. And what I mean by that is tell us, it can be a survey form. It could be just, anecdotal, but tell us why you were interested in working here. Tell us what drove you to actually accept our offer. What could we improve about the candidate experience as you were walking in the door? Like, you liked this, but maybe we could have done this better. Get feedback actually at that point instead of waiting until when they're leaving. And I want you to get feedback when they're leaving too. Hopefully they don't leave, and if they don't leave, then you may never know that. And you might win them over as they become an employee long-term within your organization, but you should really understand kind of what drove them there and what was good and bad about the process, just getting them in the door. And that says a lot about the organization and actually can kind of fix any hesitations that employee might have about joining your organization if the candidate experience didn't go as well as it should have gone. It's a way for you to say, hey, what did we do well? What didn't we do? And we want to fix it now because we don't want that to happen again. So we value your opinion. And you can use all of that to just then continue to build that employee relationship with that, that person and that team.
So let's take a step back for a second as we're talking about those moments to onboard, which I think provides good data for how we communicate, what we learn about, why. How do we start building that talent pipeline? I think it probably goes a little bit beyond just job postings, but, bring me up to that moment where somebody is given an offer. What advice would you have for our audience on, the way to structure a talent pipeline that might be different than you might think?
So the talent, so we call them talent communities. It can be considered a pipeline. It's different from the people that you hire. Not that they're not talented and they're not your talent as well. But when I look at it, you're looking at two different types of categories. So your employees are your employees, and your talent pipeline are people that maybe not now, but could be in the future. So applicants, people have shown interest in your organization. You know, if you do, you know, interview 7, 10 people for a job and then you shortlist them, but the people that you interviewed, for the most part, they had a lot of the attributes that you would have liked for your organization, but maybe they lacked a skill set, or maybe they lacked something that just wasn't going to get them over the finish line at this point. My recommendation, and it's a lot more work and people don't like to do it, and I recognize that, but it makes a difference, is get back to them, actually tell them why they weren't selected for the job. What could they do to potentially be selected for a future position? Please stay in touch with us. Create a community in which you can engage with them with company information, updates on products and services, maybe some internal stuff. For us, it's easy. We just invite them to follow us on social media and we stay in touch with them. And perhaps you want to encourage old applicants, go to your systems and look at your tracking database and your applicants, and it's been a year. Reach out to them and say, it's been a year since we met. Would you like to update your application and resume on file? Because you may find that they have skills that you could use now that they didn't have a year ago. So it's really taking that candidate experience and then pushing it forward so they can be a potential candidate for you in 6, 12, 18 months down the road. So it's that entire, like, basically loop of engaging with them, providing feedback, providing closure, providing updates, information, and opportunities to continue to interact with your organization. That's one talent community. Another talent community could be as simple as your customers and people that have worked with your organization that like what they get, like how they're being treated, and potentially could be opportunities as well. So, you know, everybody thinks about marketing products and services different than marketing employment opportunities and the employer brand. And a lot of times they go hand in hand because people want to work for companies where they like the product. They have a loyalty to the brand. And so if you can take people that potentially might be customers of yours, do similar things, obviously not ask them for an application if they've never applied, but you can do similar types of engagements with them and get them interested in your organization, potentially as an employee themselves, or maybe they have a friend, maybe they have a family member that would meet an opportunity. So those would be a couple of ways where I would nurture talent communities. And then how you structure them is going to be completely up to the company. You can structure it by skill set, you can structure it by department, it could be a variety of things. So you'd have to kind of look at what would work best for your organization. The key to the talent community, in my opinion, is you're going to have two different types of things going on. You're going to have an applicant tracking database. You have all of your applicants that have ever applied be in your database. You should always go back to that and look for talent, number one. But there's a difference between that talent engagement and those top maybe 5 people that stood out, didn't get the job for whatever reason, but stood out as potentials for the future. That's a different group, and those are the ones you want to give a little bit of extra attention to, a little bit more special information, make them an insiders club. There's all different ways that you can do it to get those people to stay engaged within your organization. And oftentimes I have candidates that never get placed by our organization but are huge ambassadors for our company because they had such a good experience when they were with us, when we were trying to help them find a job. And that can just, you know, obviously pay big dividends.
Charles, let me throw it to you.
There's so much there, Miriam. That's great. That's great. I'm taking notes too, so I'm learning a lot as well. A couple things stood out to me that I just wrote down with transparency. You know, I think that was a great word there. You know, being transparent of why they were a good fit or why they may not have been a good fit, right? And empathizing too of where they are in their careers and where they want to go. So I think, you know, if as leaders and as recruiters, if we're seen as a good resource to them, you know, they'll come back. If we're seen as a connector as well. So, you know, really digging in, you know, during that interview or the first time you connect with somebody, what they really want. And, you know, when I say being a resource, so times are changing, right? You know, we even just implemented a new ATS system last summer. And we know that, you know, so does their client's resume, is it able to be transferred easily to an ATS system where it auto-populates for you? So, you know, maybe, you know, even just being a resource for helping somebody rewrite their resume or start a resume, you know, that's important too, being that resource for them. And Yeah, I love the fact that, you said whether it's you're giving feedback throughout the process, right? So there's that transparency. And asking them, again, what do they need help with? Where do they feel there'd be a best fit? And then, maybe they may come back to you, or they know somebody. Not everybody's a healthcare worker, but they probably know a healthcare worker. So that's where we want to be out there and just connecting. And even how you get that person to find you, right, in your company is, I think one of the best things we've done for our nurses over the course of the past few years is letting them tell their story. So, why they, a couple platforms here. So maybe for nurses, I'll say it would be like, why did you get into healthcare? More often than not, the answer is my mother, a family member, it's in the blood, right? Somebody got them into that industry. Or, another platform I've been using is, why do you choose to still work on the front lines during a pandemic or in general? No, but giving them that platform, and then then it also gives me the tools to give them the platform on social media. And then this is telling more about our culture, and then that's being seen by others to draw them to your companies. It's a roundabout answer.
Yeah, and I'll mention, and again, this kind of goes back to what I was saying before, but I think it's relevant here also. The going beyond just the job postings and promoting on social media, promoting indirectly about what I love about my job, what keeps me on the front lines, really can reach the person that's not the active job seeker. There may be folks that, aren't going through the classified sections, that don't have an Indeed or aren't, registered with your organization already. I remember, 20 plus years ago, earlier on in my career, one of our strategies for a recruitment and retention campaign were to run display ads in the lifestyle section of the paper of record. And it was really designed mostly for that indirect referral, where a mother might be reading the paper and seeing something and remarking to a family member or daughter, whoever, son, whoever it is, and saying, hey, I noticed that so-and-so really is hiring, or it seems like they have a really good culture there and you may not be happy where you're at. Now that's obviously evolved into social media, but I think that's one of those really, really interesting places to, reach somebody that's not just necessarily that direct job seeker. So, and so I guess
that's what companies need to do right now, Paul, is there's a difference between an active job seeker and a passive job seeker. And active ones are going out and looking, who's posting jobs, where can I apply, who can I connect with to try to find a job. Oftentimes, the better candidates, and I'm only saying this as this isn't a blanket statement, many times the passive candidates, so people who are gainfully employed, who don't have their resume on Indeed, who aren't like looking at job postings every week, typically tend to be the ones that you want to get in front of, because yeah, they might not be looking today or tomorrow, or maybe they are really unhappy in their organization, but they haven't like come to the realization that they want to make a change. But at the same time, they have a family member or a friend, telling them about this, that, or the other company, or I see, have you ever heard of this organization? They seem to be doing a lot of stuff lately, or whatever it might be. So the goal of making an impression with passive job seekers should be part of the strategy for any organization and their recruitment plan.
Yep. And so in addition to social media, I think email kind of comes to mind, how you can just drop in some of those candidates into your email systems. Are there any other tools that people should be thinking about to stay engaged with applicants either before or if they weren't selected?
You have to be careful with email. I got to be honest with you. Charles, I think, said it earlier, at the old-fashioned picking up the phone and trying to talk to people. What we have found with our methods is I used to be a call first, email second, and follow up often until someone got back to me. Anyone you call and they don't know your phone number, you are probably not going to get them to answer the call for the most part. I mean, it depends. What we have found is oftentimes texting. So texting people, making an introduction that way, maybe in our text giving them a link to a job, something to try to start a conversation. And from there, we often will get a response via the phone or a text back. Yes, I'd like to talk with you, whatever it might be. Email is a little bit more difficult. I mean, think about it. I don't know about you, but when I turn on my personal email, I literally hit the button that selects everything as junk mail. And then I go through really quickly and unselect the ones I actually want to read. And on any given day, what is that, 2 emails? So email messages can get lost. So I would recommend that maybe use it as part of your strategy, but don't rely just on email. The other thing is LinkedIn is a fabulous tool. I consider it social media. Most consider it part of social media. It's the professional social media platform of choice right now. That tool is great. And if you're messaging from LinkedIn, it's even better, because then when they get it in their inbox, it's a LinkedIn message rather than just an email. And sometimes that will trigger them to at least click and view the message. So I find LinkedIn is a very helpful tool, but you want to do it from a standpoint of not just targeting people constantly. Do networking, those types of things, and use a combination of intel, so to speak, to try to connect with people that you might want to connect with. So that works pretty well for our organization in terms of that. And yeah, the best way to do it is pick up the phone and try to call people. And if they'll answer your call, thumbs up. But usually you can get a text and then arrange a phone call after that. But it's also volume too. You're going to have to reach out to a lot of people and just be not resigned to the fact, but understand that the statistics of it are, if you want to get 5 potential candidates for a job, you're probably going to have to reach out to 40 if you're doing complete active recruiting and you're not waiting or looking at job postings or people who've actually actively applied to you. So, and that's going to change on the job, but it is a little bit of a numbers game in terms of, and that's not just for our industries from an agency's perspective. That's the same thing on the corporate side. So, the post and pray days just don't work like they used to. And you have to be a little bit more active in your strategy to get people interested in your organization.
Miriam, just a question there. This may be directed toward your SHRM experience too. So I know on our job postings, we had to include in there, by applying to this job, you're allowing Nurse Connection staffing to call you, email you, and text you. So is there a disclaimer on there? I wasn't sure over the course of the past year or two. I think there was the texting aspect, just because we're all getting robocalls.
I don't have that disclaimer. I've not been told by any legal counsel that that's something I need to add to my job postings. Oftentimes, I think texting has changed from what it used to be. So texting used to be, you paid per text, and there was all of that data issues that people had years ago. That really doesn't seem to be the case anymore, because people just have unlimited plans for calls and texts and whatever. So, but what we have been told is if we do some type of, if someone, responds, take me off your list or don't text me again, we have to make sure we identify that and do the proper protocols in our system so that we're not reaching out to them again. But I don't actually have that on my job postings. No, I think it's assumed and commonplace for people to understand that they are going to be contacted in some way, shape, or form if they apply.
Right. Yeah. To save our recruiters some time, we've done that too, because we know, probably 60 to 70% of the time we're not going to get them on the first call. So we kind of have an email template, letting them know, and then a follow-up text as well. It's like, hey, this is Charles. I'm not a spammer. I'm just following up.
That's what my texts usually are. Is I'm not a spammer. One thing I would say about templates is obviously templates and those types of things can save you tons of time. But be careful in completely relying on a template all the time, because after a while, if you can be personal in your messages and draw something out, whether it be there's something on their resume or LinkedIn profile or somebody they follow, or I've seen your name come up a couple of times with some of my connections, again, it's more work. But if you can try to take that template and then personalize it as best that you can, I find that works a little bit better in terms of at least piquing someone's interest.
Yeah, I've even seen people take some of those templates and do a very good job trying to customize it. Dear Paul, here's the position title that, name of the position that you were applying to, et cetera. But then the font is changed. So you have this name and title and stuff. So I think, even as you go to customize it, just check it, maybe test it, make sure that it, technically looks as good as and custom and personal as you can make it. So we were chatting a minute ago about, nurturing those candidates that maybe weren't necessarily the right fit for a particular position, but maybe down the road could be somebody you would consider elsewhere in the organization. How do you reach out to that? I mean, this is not my area of expertise, but I would think if I applied for a job, in a particular, say I wanted to be a nurse, or I am a nurse in an OR surgical suite on a surgical team, and that's what I identify with, that's what I'm currently doing, that's what I applied for within your organization, but you didn't hire me for it. But maybe you have a similar, position, but in a different department, in, some other, department within a hospital or wherever. How do you convince that person to consider it? What are some of those strategies, I guess, to get them to think about other opportunities that, beyond what they'd initially applied for?
Charles,
Yeah, sure. Sure. So a number of things are going through my head right now. So because our company as an agency, the staff who come to this, they have to have at least a year experience, right? Not everybody has that year experience, or even the other way too, maybe an LPN has, 14 years of experience as an LPN, but they just became an RN. And we still need that full year as an RN experience. So I think it's having good relationships with our client facilities. And again, going back to being a connector, empathizing with them and letting them know you care. Like, geez, we can't, unfortunately work you right now, but I'd love to, here's a list of our clients that I'd be happy to connect you with. And making that connection, number one, you're going to make your clients really happy too, the facility clients, and then those employees as well. And even, like I said, let's have deeper conversations with people too. Like, in healthcare, there's so much burnout. It seems like even from the C level, the administrators, directors of nursing, every 2 years they're getting burned out. They need a break. So, it's knowing. I think in the banking world, it's know your customer, KYC. Know your client, know your staff, and what are they going through every day, and how do they feel? Maybe they need to change. And I think came with this pandemic, we have a lot more opportunities to do, different screenings. So maybe taking them out of that long-term care hospital setting for a few months, giving them a little bit of a break and getting them into a different setting, maybe that'll just help them. Or even saying, hey, you know what, you're per diem staff, or you can work as little or as much as you want with us. We have you take a little break for a little bit too from us, and just to give yourself some time. But yeah, I think the more you can be seen as a connector, the better off you will be long term, and you'll get more referrals from that.
I mean, it circles back to what we were talking about before. If you treat them like a number and they get a template email that says thanks but no thanks with no follow-up information or anything, you're going to have a harder time convincing them down the road to reapply for a job. But if they're a candidate that you like what you see, but there's a reason, a legitimate reason, which there should always be a legitimate reason why they weren't selected, try to have a personal conversation with them, or send a personal follow-up email, thanking them for their time, thanking them for their interest, encouraging them to stay in touch with your organization, letting them know that you were a great candidate, but we just couldn't hire you for this role because of this reason. And if you establish that rapport and that relationship with the person, they're going to be more likely to potentially keep the lines of communication open or look for other opportunities within your company. But if you treat them as just a number and another piece of paper or a resume, it's going to be really hard to then get them to be more excited about applying to your roles in the future. And as I also said, for those great candidates that have potential, invite them to update their resume every 6 months. Invite them to, give you a status on what they're currently doing and up to. I mean, that's common practice for our office is, people that we've worked with and we haven't necessarily placed right away. following up with them frequently and saying, how are you doing in your job search? What's changed since the last time we talked? Are you still interested in hearing about opportunities? Like all of those things that will keep the person engaged. So it's about the engagement and how you treat the person through the candidate process that will help you in the future.
Yeah. So it's all coming up on about 10 of the hour, and I would love to wrap up a few minutes beforehand. I think for me, this is the new gift. If somebody wants to schedule a meeting with me and they started at 5 after, or they ended about 5 of, I'll vote yes on whatever else you have, and thank you for that break in between. So as we kind of come to the end of the conversation today, Charles and Miriam, I'm going to throw you guys, you're not really ready for this, but it's that kind of one piece of advice question, and I'll ask it in a second. Because our audience is diverse, we have people that are tuning in now and watching on demand that represent urban, suburban, rural healthcare organizations, larger health systems, really robust teams, smaller teams, and so give us that sort of parting thought. If our organization should only do one thing, either validate what I'm already doing or tell me the one thing that I could or should be putting into place right now to really help build a stronger talent pipeline, what would that one piece of advice be for somebody? Whoever wants to go first. Or I'll keep riffing while you guys think of your answer.
I know, I'm thinking of what my answer should be because there's so many answers. I mean, I think for if I were to walk away and I'm talking to an organization that needs help with recruiting, and regardless if they hire us or not, they need to know if their efforts are actually working. So if you do not have metrics and measurables in place to really know where your best candidates are coming from and who your top talent is and where they came from, you need to figure that out, because you could be wasting time, money, and energy on actions and activities that really they're not moving the needle. So I would make sure that the organization knows what works for them, gets rid of what doesn't work for them, and then continues to focus correctly. I mean, there's so many things, but if I were to just pick one, I think it's, know your market, know your metrics, know what's worked, and invest in that so that it can continue to be successful moving forward. But also be open to evolve and change, because nothing ever lasts forever, and some new trend, new trick, new thing's going to happen, and you have to also be open to change to just keep being relevant.
So give me a quick follow-up on that. What's a good metric? I mean, should I be interviewing, somebody to say, how did you hear about this position? Or what are a couple metrics that you would recommend somebody pay attention to?
You should look at your applicant flow and where the people are coming from. So, you should be able to see, are they applying all from Indeed? Are they going to, is Facebook driving them to my website? Is LinkedIn driving them to my website? Those are all capturable data. So I would say first, where are you getting visibility? And yeah, making sure you know where the candidate has come from, where they've seen your information, whatever it might be. It could be employee referrals. Most of your candidates are employee referrals. You should know that. You should know what your numbers are. So that would be an excellent a data point. And then you also want to look at other things, but from just knowing where your people are coming from, that's an excellent data point and something they should be easily able to access.
Okay.
And Charles, what's your one piece of advice?
Thank you for starting that, Miriam.
Yeah, I took one for the team, buddy.
You sure did. I owe you.
Because if we were together, you'd kick me under the table like, we didn't rehearse this. Why are you throwing me this curveball?
Okay.
I think just to double off what Miriam said as well is, important to know the numbers. It is a numbers game out there. So knowing where, knowing retention numbers, your turnover numbers, turnover rates as well is important. And where those candidates are coming from. So I think like in last year, we said 40% of our referrals were coming directly from our staff. Another 40% Indeed is that I still consider them the elephant in the room. They are the #1 resource online. But that's good. So it's good to know where you're hiring from, and maybe you're putting more money into that as well. And also then the other side is know who you're recruiting for. As Gen Zers are in the workforce now, do you need to be a little bit more creative? Should you be on Instagram versus Facebook? I mean, Facebook does give some great analytics. If you're part of an administrator there, you can know when your customers or when your followers are online during what hours of the day. So maybe you're doing posts catered around that time. Or, do we need to get a little bit more creative and start, TikTok, whether you like it or not, it's out there, people are using it. So maybe you just create a video and that shows some of your culture. One of the things I try to instill in everybody here at the office is learning, right? And understanding that I think if we all, and with everything going on in the world today, I'm not going to get political, but if everybody took the approach again that, we have more in common than we do different. And if everybody took the idea that anybody you meet throughout the day, whether it's a cashier at the gas station, or anybody, again, that you encounter, you have an opportunity to learn from that person. So whether it's the candidate that didn't fit your company or if the candidate was a great candidate and you're ready to hire them, you have an opportunity to learn from them. So, if I were to ask you, would you learn from Paul or from Miriam today? Of course we could say, because you gave us a great platform to do so here, Paul, but, what did you learn from anybody you interacted with today? And if you can kind of, either recap that with yourself at night, think about what you learned today, might be a great tool just to carry on with you.
No, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. And I think as both of you were agreeing about the concept of metrics, I see that's something that's going to be increasingly important in the coming year, as we're going to be challenged with either doing more with less, potentially having our budgets cut. The more that we can prove, please don't cut this aspect of it because I can prove to you that 28% of our candidates last year came through this door or whatever it is. I think that's going to be important, even for our own self-preservation, the ability to retain our teams and our budgets to be able to do what we need to do is going to be, in more under more of a microscope with our leadership and our trustees as they ask, prove it. It's the old saying in advertising, I know half my advertising is working, I just don't know which half. And so the more that you can justify it and defend it, the more you're going to be able to preserve and keep it. So
absolutely.
Well, this has been great. Thank you both for sharing your time with us. We'll send a follow-up note out to folks that registered. Thank you for all of you that are joining us live here, not only on Zoom, but also watching this live stream on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We'll start to look at some of the comments that are there on social media, share those with the panel. And I'll put their contact information not only on this web page if you're watching this on demand, but also as we email to thank everybody for registering. And if you couldn't join us live, to be able to not only watch it on demand, but also questions that you might have for our panel. So Miriam, Charles, thank you so much for sharing your time, your experience. I think this has been really helpful. I learned a ton. I'm scribbling notes throughout the whole thing. So
Paul, can I just leave you two with a couple maybe scary statistics here? All right, so I just pulled a couple things recently.
Yeah, and end us on a high note, Charles.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
right.
So this is a scary one. So 65% of people see online search as the most trusted source of information about people and companies. Scary, right? But it's true. Last year, 29% of current workforce was made up of internal referrals. So again, going back to that, engaging your employees, keeping them engaged. And then the other piece too, of course, mobile friendly, we have to be, right? So 78% of candidates who own a smartphone will apply through a job through their mobile phone. So keeping that mobile friendly device there as well. And then the last one, 53% of candidates trust a company when it reaches out quickly. So I know right on our job postings, we put on there, thank you for applying. A recruiter will be in touch with you within 24 hours. So get back to those candidates as soon as possible.
Those are great. Perfect. Thank you. Those are good little nuggets to have anyway, I guess. Not terribly scary. Those are good. Yeah.
Facts, data.
You had me worried there for a second.
I know, right?
I was like, oh, what's he going to do? Get ready with the 7 second
You hit us with one, so no.
Right back at you, Paul. Well, thank you both very much. I appreciate you sharing your time and experience. Enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll see you again here soon, I hope.
You too.
Thanks so much. Take care, guys.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.